Welcome everyone, this is Silver, casting another 1v1 Heart of the Swarm game on the North American ladder. Now this is on Daybreak LE, and introducing the players, in the bottom left hand corner of the rink we have Austech representing the Protest, and in the top right center of the screen we have none other than the King of Queens. As you may know from the Swarm Host vs Marines post on their general discussion, I'm not sure, but he is giving it another shot at redemption, as this time he is against a Protoss player. We'll see if he can perform a little better here, as his opponent is now going for, it looks like, an early expansion build, considering his pylon is at the entrance to his base. However, that is not really great pylon coverage because it will only cover around half the map, half the ramp, well, half the entrance, and you're going to want to really cover all that up so to get a wall off. So we'll see if he actually can't finish his wall in time, as King is just building drones, and you can see he does have the custom Overlord haircut, which is always sweet. And so looks like King's going for an expansion build as well. He is sending out his scout right about now, as Austech has made it into the base. And so yeah, right now we just got some macro game going on. Now Daybreak is an interesting map because there's no direct route through the center of the map. I believe if you start here and you right click your opponent's base, they go all the way around here. So that's kind of interesting. However, there is a couple destructible paths like this in the middle. I didn't even realize this was there for the longest time. And by clearing this, you can actually get to the opponent's base a lot faster. Now, Tech's probe is now chilling at King's expansion. We'll see if he goes for a delay here. And at King's base, he is just at Tech's base. King's worker has just gotten there. He's going some scouting information. We'll see if he can do anything up for that. And King has decided to build a pool before his hatchery, considering the probe was blocking it. We'll see if he soon drops a hatchery to follow, considering he does have a lot of minerals, or he might send out some links. In the meantime, Kings, they're having a worker fight right now between a probe and a drone. I believe the drone will make it out ahead, considering he has a little bit more HP. He actually manages to scare it off. And King decides to build a... it looks like he decided to build an Evo chamber right inside his opponent's base to prevent the natural. We'll see if that pays off, as this Tech's probe is desperately trying to bring this thing down before it completes. However, at King's base, it looks like he is going to get his expansion up, and Tech's responding by building a cannon. So this will probably die. It's just to delay the expansion even further. And in the meantime, King has actually spawned a wave of lings. He has currently 6 Zerglings on the field. Austech does spot this. Will this be complete in time, as his cannon is almost done? However, these lings might be able to make it inside the main base before another cannon is complete. We'll see if that is the case here, as King's also getting good scouting information. It looks like one of his overlords was picked off. I believe it was right around here oh wait, no, he just supply capped himself with an extractor. So the little cool Zerg trick. As a Zergling's out here, however, Austech with the quick reflexes drops a pylon in space, so it looks like these lings are going to die. And I guess that was just not meant to be. And his overlord is shoot away. We just shoot that overlord away with those cannons. So good job with Tech on fending off the first attack. If you look, he's actually ahead severely in the worker count because of that Zergling attack. So we'll see if King can bounce back here. And in the production tab, we do have double gases going down for Tech, so he will be getting those higher tier units really quickly, as his cyber core has complete. He has finally been able to drop his expo. However, it is substantially behind King's, considering his is done, so King will most likely be able to pick up in the econ tab at this point. Meanwhile, King's overlords have positioned themselves around his opponent's base for possible scouting later. And King is currently working on Queens and he's getting his first gas, so it doesn't look like we'll have any layer tech out quickly. So Austech, however, is poking around in his opponent's natural, just getting some scouting information. He has seen that the expo is up, so maybe he'll decide to go for an attack here, considering King doesn't really have any units besides a queen. And well, neither does Tech. So because they both kind of went expo openers, however, they both were delayed by the workers of the opponent. So yeah, we'll see. It doesn't look like there's not going to be too much action underway very quickly, because no one has any units, and it is 6 minutes into the game. So I guess the 6-minute rush is no more in StarCraft 2, considering most builds and most the metagame has kind of switched into a more macro-oriented game. You don't really see a lot of one-base all-ins anymore, considering they're easily defended, like such things as the photon overcharge, as spine crawlers or bunkers or siege tanks. So getting ahead in the economy early is quite beneficial in several terms, and Tech has decided to build a Stargate as his first tech choice, and King is still crunking out a lot of drones. He hasn't even started his layer tech yet, and he's working on metabolic speed for the Zerglings. He actually has 2 Zerglings on the field. We'll see if they do something. And this probe is here, however, this queen is in position to attack, and it looks like this probe will be going down. If you take a look at the units tab, King is actually severely caught up with Tech in his worker count, considering he is now leading by around 10. So even though that Ling harass did set him back, the delaying of the expansion, however, has kept him in par with his opponent. And it looks like Tech's throwing down 3 gateways to complement his Stargate. So we'll see what he decides to produce with this gateway. Maybe some Phoenix, maybe some Oracles or Void Rays. Personally, if I was in position, I would choose Phoenixes, get around 4 or 5, and go for a harass. But we'll see if he decides to do that. He's also building a mothership core, which is also great for defense. And he's working on +1 upgrades for his ground. However, this Overlord is in position to spot this, and it is fortunately taken out by the Stalkers. That was another brave sacrifice by an Overlord today, as he has managed to ooh, there's actually an attack going on. The King has spotted his opponent's pylon that he set up at his building 3rd, so that will be taken out. But like I was saying, back to that scout, as you can see, he did get a good glimpse of everything that is going on here, so he is prepared for the air. As the first Phoenix is done for Tech, he is moving out with it. Maybe he can get a couple easy Overlord kills, and this Overlord goes down, and it looks like the Queen is here to defend this. I don't believe this Phoenix will be doing much, considering there's already a Spore. And there's actually not much production going on as far as units go for either players. They're both focusing on macro. There is an Overlord preventing, is now pooping. That is great timing. The Overlord just started pooping as Tech decided to move out and build his 3rd base, and it's just going to be like denied. He decides not to build the gas or the pylons anyway, as he is going to kill off his Overlord for pooping on his 3rd expansion. However, there is 2 Phoenix on the field for him, so we'll see if Tech can actually make something happen here. However, 2 is really not enough. Even if you manage to pick up a Queen, you're not going to be doing any damage whatsoever. So he needs to get more Phoenixes out there in order to attack. But however, I believe he's concerned right now with building his 3rd base, considering his opponent's 3rd is almost done. His Phoenixes are actually just kind of hanging out over his opponent's base. So it looks like King has decided to still focus on drones. He has kept up in the drone production, as both his main and his natural are pretty much almost fully saturated. His layer is complete. We'll see what his first tech choice is, as there is no tech underway. He's actually decided to build a roach horn for some roaches. And on the Protoss side, he's massing up a fair amount of stalkers. He actually isn't producing anything more with this Stargate. That's unfortunate. He's decided to build a Twilight Council, and the Phoenixes have moved in again, but once again the Spore Crawlers are here to defend this, and so 2 is not really enough to do anything, maybe a worker kill or 2. He's actually going to try to do this, or just get some scouting information. So the upgrades for Tech on his ground has finished, and he's now working on the armor for his ground. And these Phoenixes are actually might be taken off here, as the Spore is defending this, so these Phoenixes are kind of just chilling. They're not really attacking much. They're just kind of on patrol, flying around, so not really paying off. However, he has built another one. Maybe you try to do something. He picks up 1 worker, and maybe another. Actually decides to build Spore with them. That's a great way to prevent them from being picked up. So that was a good call by King. And yeah, so it looks like these Phoenixes are going to pull out. And if you look in the production tab, King is actually sticking with roaches and drones. He should probably get a higher tech structure up pretty soon. Actually, he's decided, it's like as he heard me, he decided to build a Hydralisk den. I don't know, maybe he's can read my thoughts. And this is actually something I've been seeing going on a lot for Protoss, is they wall off their 3rd on this map by putting a bunch of buildings like gateways and forges. So he's actually going for the triple upgrade with his forges, considering that will be his 3rd. His Twilight Council is done, so he's all set to start upgrading all 3 at a time. So that's pretty intense, and his Phoenixes are kind of just moving around. And the Hydralisks are underway for King, so these Phoenixes won't be getting any damage done anytime soon. So yeah, this is, as you can see from the length of this video, this is quite a long match. I'm kind of excited to see what happens because nothing has really happened much. It's just been a little failed Zergling harass followed by a lot of macro, and some Phoenixes doing absolutely nothing. But the Spores are moving up to defend this, and Tech is working into Templars, High Templars for the Storms, considering he might have seen the... Nope, he hasn't seen the Hydralisk Den yet, so I guess that's he just wants to go with High Templars, but those Templars will prove very invaluable against the Hydralisk that King has produced. And if we take a look at the army supply, they're around even right now, so King is actually deciding to press out with the attack. However, there is a couple Phoenixes here, however they probably will be forced to retreat as there's Hydras en masse. And to answer this Hydra, Ling, Roach, kind of Roach army is... a Stalker Sentry with a couple Zealots ball with Archon moving in. So it's a Death Ball, but I'm afraid there's no Death in here because there's no Colossus, there's no Void Ray Bomb, there's no Carriers. So as he is moving in for the attack, we'll see what happens here as the Zerglings are jockeying for position. However, they are forced back, and it looks like he might try to go for control here. As he does, the Zerglings go in, the Roaches are manning the front line with the Hydras in the back. This is proving this is going to be damaging them a lot. The Stalkers, however, are holding their ground as the Phoenixes have picked up several Hydras, and King's army is falling quite fast. However, he does manage to take out the Phoenixes, and there's a fair number of Hydras left. However, the Stalkers are just too much in number, as these Hydras are probably going to die, as there's 3, 2, and 1. So that was it. That was the first major engagement that was severely favored the Protoss player Tech in that advance, and is actually deciding to destroy these destructible debris I was talking about earlier. So it's pretty cool. And in the meantime, in the production, King has transferred into Aspire. We'll see if he decides to go with Corruptors, Broodlords, or Mutas. And Austech is now working on his triple upgrades, which is pretty damn cool. You don't really see that a lot, but it probably will pay off in the later game when he has 3-3-3 of everything. So, and the upgrades are underway for King as well. However, they are vastly behind his opponent. And so the Protoss is moving out to attack King, it looks like. As you can see, he only has a fair amount of Roaches and a few Hydras that are going to be able to defend this. And Psystorm is underway for the Protoss player that could destroy all these Hydralisks. So we'll see what happens here as the Protoss is moving in for an attack. They don't have an observer, so they cannot see any of these creep tumors. There is actually a good line of spines to defend this as Tech decides to pull back a little bit. I don't think he wants to engage against the static defense. King is actually moving up his spines in response to cover the entrance of that ramp. And Tech decides to pull back. So Tech is deciding to build 2 Robos in response to the Hydralisks, I believe, to get out some Colossus. And so we'll see if that can pay off. However, he doesn't know that there's a Spire right now for King. So Corruptors could ruin his day. And actually, King is trying the Swarm Host out again. He has it's producing 4 Swarm Hosts for his army composition. Now, last time he tried this, of a game I watched, he got ran over by a group of pissed off Marines, so we'll see what happens. Now in the meantime, Tech has actually placed a proxy pylon outside his opponent's base just out of view. That's kind of funny. We'll see if he goes for an attack here. However, there is a ton of spine crawlers here in response in order to answer this, so we'll see if this attack actually commences. As both armies are just sitting at their watchtowers, not really doing anything. As you look at the size of the armies, Tech has a slight lead. However, since he's Protoss, his army is a little bit more expensive as well. Actually, no, it's more expensive in gas, but less in minerals. So yeah, nothing's really happening much. As you can see, there is an attack going down. Actually, no, it's not an attack. It's just an Overlord being sniped off by this Phoenix. However, it did manage to spot everything again, so once again, that was another good sacrificial Overlord, and he has managed to see all these gateways being produced, so that is a ton of gateways right now. If you look at the structures, that puts him at 12 warp gates, so he has 12 warp gates, and meanwhile the 4th for King has been besieged by a line of zealots. We'll see if the army can save it as they are coming into position. The Zerglings are streaming in, however I believe this hatchery will fall as it has less than 100 HP, and there it goes, an explosion of guts. There are King's army is here, however, and will be able to clean up the zealots. However, losing that expansion does kind of put him behind his opponent, considering Austech's 4th is already up. So right now King's actually looking a little bit behind in this game, considering he is a base behind his opponent. He needs to throw out that. He needs to max out, considering he has a large bank, and he needs to throw out a couple more hatcheries at his expansions. Now Austech is approaching maxed out, and he's deciding to move out with his army. It is composed of stalkers, 1 Tempest, Archons, a lot of zealots, and a couple others, with 10 High Templars full of energy. That is a lot of Templars. So we'll see if those storms can make it happen. As he is approaching maxed out, he might be able to attack soon, considering his +3 upgrades are almost finished. And he's actually built a fleet beacon in the meantime, and has Tempest being built. Not sure what that will do for his army. And with his robo facilities, he's producing straight observers. So he does have detection now, and he can actually clean up this creep spawn. Now this hatchery is being rebuilt by King, so we'll see if he can do here. In the meantime, he does have a large bank, and he does have a lot of larvae. He should probably do something with that, considering his opponent is maxed out, and well, he will be maxed out, and he needs to catch up because he is actually severely behind in the army supply. He needs to produce something now, or else this attack will fail. So, and he's producing his hive tech structure. He's producing his hive right now, so he will have access to higher tech later. And so we'll see what he decides to make of that. There is a Tempest on the field, and in this corner there is an Overseer doing some scouting with being chased by a Phoenix. Now let's see if he gets some information. He does see the double forge, he does see all this expansion. However, this wall up is proving quite valuable, and Austech is moving his army back into the watchtower. The 4th for King is almost done, and is looking at his upgrades. It looks like he has +1, +2 range, +2 ground armor, and he's working on +1 for the melee. So considering that melee upgrade will help his Zerglings, but that might indicate that he's going for Ultralisk, considering that benefits them too in a big way. So Austech has sent out some zealots. I believe these are sacrificial zealots, as they have nothing to do against this army, as they all explode in a puff of red smoke. And there's unfortunately a stalker caught here. He is desperately trying to run for his life. I don't believe he make it, as he runs straight into a wall of spines. Kaboom! There he goes. That was just like all at once. All those spines attacked simultaneously, and that stalker exploded. However, with the bank that Tech has amassed, I don't believe that will really cost him anything. And with the hive tech, King has decided to build some Vipers. So Vipers are pretty cool to play with. They could disable the range on all the stalkers. However, there is not that many. Well, there is a couple stalkers. He can disable the range on his opponent, as well as adopt a couple critical targets into his army. And he's also working on a Greater Spire and an Ultralisk Cavern. So we might see Broodlords and Ultralisk. Maybe he's just doing that to prepare for, you know, extra. I don't know. He's just, you know, to prepare for the worst. As a pylon is building right now for Tech, he's managed to do it once again and place a pylon right on top of King's 4th base. However, the army is here to spot this before it finishes, and it looks like it will die. However, he has just showed his Vipers that might not be the best idea. And I believe he's not maxed out yet, even though he has a large bank, considering he's saving his supply for something else, maybe the Ultralisk. And as you can see, the Swarm Host, he's just decided to put a couple up for defense. He has 2 at his natural and 2 at his main. And these Vipers are gaining energy by sucking this hatchery dry of life. So, yeah. King did not decide to play with the Swarm Host. I believe he just built a few for defense. So the Protoss right now is getting pretty much every upgradable every upgrade possible, and he's actually warping in a mothership core, which is pretty cool. You don't see that every day now, because they removed the vortex from the mothership core, and it's kind of slow. It does 6 damage. Well, no, it does 6 times 6. It does 36 damage, so that's substantial. However, there is one Zealot unfortunate enough to be attacking King's 5th base. It will go down, and King has finally maxed up, and he's actually decided to build 4 Ultralists in response, so we'll see if they can do something here. However, he does have a large bank of minerals, and he does have 77 larvae, so he could remax this army with a complement of lings, roaches, and hydras should it fall. But if you look at tech structures, he has a lot of production. He has 2 robos, 12 gateways, and a stargate, so he will be able to build army. He will be able to build a sizable remaxing force as well. However, since he does have 5k minerals, he should be dropping tons of gateways. Instead, he's deciding to pull out with the attack. His units are cloaked. Does King have an overseer to detect this? I'm not sure if he does. We'll see. However, he does have 2. However, they are not in position as Protoss army has reached the front of King's base, and there is some spines being built. They will go down. However, King's army is here. The Ultralists are approaching the flank. They are going to town on the Zealots. The Ultras have flanked the army. The Vipers are moving in. They haven't really done much. There's a lot of Corruptors here. However, they are doing substantial damage to any air. And the storms do go down on the entirety of King's army, and it looks like he will be losing a lot of these Hydras in this response. And the Ultralist is still going to town. There's unfortunately only 1 left. This Corruptors are going straight for this Mothership Core. It looks like they will be able to bring it down and dealing the rest of the air, and these Tempests will probably most likely as follow. However, there is only a couple of Hydras left for King as they do go down. He has actually no ground forces at this moment to defend. However, he does have 54 Zerglings being built and 5 Ultralists, and however they aren't here now. We'll see if Tech can maybe destroy this hatchery. As you can see, King is actually still ahead in supply because of all the Zerglings that are underway. As Zerglings are streaming across the map, they're going to get a good surround on this Archon as well as the other. There's, however, a lot of Stalkers here to answer this. However, Stalkers are not the best versus these Zerglings, as they will continue the attack. They get a good couple surrounds on a few Zerglings, and the Stalkers are trying to run away. However, there is a lot of Zerglings, but most of them have fallen. And you can see the production deck. King has built 84 Zerglings, so he's now building 42 sets of Zerglings that are coming in here, as well as his Ultralists are complete. They will probably be able to defend this, as there are 5 Ultralists versus this many Stalkers. These Stalkers are probably in a bit of a trouble, as the Ultralists are going to town. However, he does manage to blink away, saving the majority of his forces. And King has actually jumped vastly ahead in supply. As you can look at the army supply, he is 108 to 48. As I was talking about, Austech did not have enough to remax as he is being forced back into his base. However, there is a lot of cannons here, and the Lings cannot get a good surround on its opponent. However, these Ultralists will probably be destroying everything. However, the Archons have spawned, and their AoE damage is doing tons of damage to everything. However, they are not just enough, as the Ultralists have decided to destroy them as well. Tech's army is dwindling radically, as he does not have much to defend this, and he is currently only producing 1 Tempest at a time. This could be it, folks. He has actually no army at this time, except for this Stalker and this Archon. However, the Ultralists have decided just to focus, and with a huge warp in of all Zealots, he might be able to save his Nexus. However, it's not meant to be, as it does go down in an explosion. And these Zealots are not enough to clear up these Ultralists. These Ultralists have 5 armor. They are just going to town. And these Zealots never had a chance. So King finally able to take a commanding lead here, as he has destroyed the majority of his opponent's forces. I believe there's very few left for Tech. So we could have a game here. So these probes are unfortunate enough to run into these Ultralists. They all just got killed pretty much instantly, and that puts King ahead of the workers killed. Wow, that was like the only workers killed this entire game, actually. So he's decided to continue with the attack and move the majority of his forces into Tech's newly built base. However, unfortunately, there's nothing here to defend this, as he doesn't have a lot of units. He's actually decided to build a lot of Ultralists, and there is a couple Stalkers here which are going to catch these Broodlords off guard. And however, there is too many Broodlings, as he is forced to retreat. However, these Tempests are going to do a number on these Broodlords. Just take a look at that 1 hit, 2 hit. Wow, these Tempests can 3-shot these Broodlords, so they will not be able to do much. The Stalkers do make it behind this wall. However, the Zerglings are streaming in from the side. They get a couple hits around. There's only 1 cannon here. It looks like these gateways might fall. However, Tech has a couple Immortals on the field somewhere. They might be able to defend this. This Tempest is attacking these Corruptors. It will probably fall. The Ultralists have destroyed the wall and are pressing onto Tech's 3rd base. And these drones are unfortunate enough not to be they're not to be commanded out of there, and they are diligently working. However, the Ultralists are proving too much, as they are all going to die. And more Zerglings are streaming in for King. However, he has massed a large amount of Stalkers with a couple Immortals in. We'll see if they can actually defend here, as there's only 3 Ultralists left. However, he is forced to retreat, and using a blink, as these Ultralists are proving too much to take. And in the production tab, there's nothing going on for King. I believe he is just focusing on this map, and he does have enough larva to build more units, so this is probably it here, folks, unless Tech can pull a miracle, as these Tempests are proving quite effective against these Ultralists, and there's another on the way. However, these Stalkers are pretty much all that Tech has left in his army. Just blinking out of a surround, there is 2 Tempests here going to town. However, these probes are also unfortunate enough to be left behind, as these Ultras are chasing them and are going to be destroying most of them. Now, that was, Tech has no more mineable bases, so this is probably it, folks. He has a couple Stalkers left to survive, and these Tempests are still going as well. However, the Zerglings are just streaming across the map right now. There is a lot of Zerglings coming in for Tech. We'll see if he can actually hold on here, as these Tempests are proving quite effective at dealing a lot of damage, because they have 6 and 4 kills respectively. These Zerglings can't do much here, as the Stalkers are blocking the front. He's actually doing good micro blinking the back, not losing any Stalkers. He warps in a line of Zealots. He does have a large amount of bank, and his infrastructure hasn't been touched yet, so he can spend this money on some of your own units, maybe try to go for a good old death ball and stay in this game, as King has actually not been able to keep up in the supply. He only has a handful of larvae to produce right now, so he cannot really produce that many more army units, as Tech has actually pulled ahead in the army supply, and he is pressing the attack. So most of King's supply is in drones at this point. However, without the larvae, he cannot really do anything with it, as Tech's army is at the front of his base. It is a large amount of Stalkers. However, there's a lot of Lings here, and the time warp goes down. These Lings are forced to retreat. These Zealots are manning the front line, so we'll see if Tech can do something here. Although he decides to pull back, he has thrown down 2 bases in response, and that is the last of his money. So these bases need to be done quickly, and he needs to be able to defend them, or else he's just going to get run over by King, because his economy is in full blown, and he now has a ton of larvae again. So he'll probably have another remaxed army very soon. And Tech is deciding to press the attack. This is probably his only option here. He has knocked off a spine and decides to pull back, realizing there's too many stacked defenses. There is a wave of Lings moving in to defend this base. The Tempests here are actually just having free range, considering they have ridiculous range on your attacks. That's like, I believe it's 15 range. Yeah, you can attack something from the Fog of War. So there is a Zergling moving out to attack Tech's building base. However, the Stalkers and Zealots are here to answer. The Zealots have charge now, so they're proving much more effective. And it looks like these Lings are going to catch this Nexus in the building process. We'll see if he can force a cancel. However, Austech is not letting this thing go down, and he does actually cancel it. However, the Zealot Stalker army is here, and a lot of Lings are picked off. However, he's able to save the majority of them by running away. And there is 2 Tempests are still attacking. However, there's a lot of Corruptors here to answer it, as King has decided to spend his money on Corruptors, so he's looking at pretty much Corruptors Lings at this point. However, that is probably enough, considering Stalkers are not that great against Lings, and his opponent doesn't really have an economy. However, his base has finished. However, he doesn't only have 16 mining probes to 59, so his economy is in shambles compared to his opponents, as King has actually gotten ahead in the army supply once again. So Tech has done a great this has been a good back and forth battle, and Tech has done a great job of holding off in these final moments. However, I believe the clock is about to strike midnight on this Cinderella story here, because King has decided to press the attack, and that is a lot of Lings. It's 100 Zerglings and a lot of Corruptors, and this army will probably be surrounded. However, the time warp does go down. The Zealots are mining the flank. However, they are overrun, as these Zerglings are proving way too much to handle. A nice blink out by Tech, however, managed to save a lot of these Stalkers. The Tempests do go down. He, however, has managed to warp in Archons to answer this. Now, the Zergling army is drastically dwindled to only 25 compared to 100, but all the Zealots have gone down, and King is building 10 Ultralists at a time. So he just lost 100 Zerglings. However, there is 10 Ultralists being built, and all Tech really has to hold on here is these Stalkers. and a few probes. We'll see if he can make something happen. Maybe DTs, considering well, there's spores at the bases, but there's not a lot of overseers, as there is no overseers. So a DT could do a lot of damage. However, it probably won't be enough. And Tech's deciding to press the attack with what little forces he has here. He's going for the good old-fashioned mini death ball. However, the Ultras are about to spawn, and we will see as one Ultras has spawned and Tech is in the retreat. The swarm hosts here are doing a pretty good job of defending. They have picked up a few kills each. And this hatchery is in full production, and most of the other bases are mined out. Actually, 3 out of the 5 bases are mined out for King. He should probably expand a couple more times, considering he is in the commanding lead at this position. And Tech is working off one base. He is warping in more Zealots. However, I'm not sure if that's going to be enough versus 10 Ultralists. So he has a good old Ultralist Corruptor army, as the Ultralists are now glowing blue in rage. We'll see if they can get some action here, as King is approaching maxed out once again. He has +2 done for these ground, and only 1 upgrade for his air. However, since the triple upgrades were going underway for Tech, this small ball of an army is proving quite effective. Considering, look at these stalkers. They have tons of this one stalker has 22 kills. These stalkers are proving quite effective with those +3 upgrades. So however, the attack is commencing. It is a wave of Zerglings followed by a wave of Ultras, with the Corruptors killing anything in the air. So we'll see what happens as Tech has approached the position. The Zealots are going in, however they are falling quite fast as the Ultras are going to town. These Archons are managed to do substantial splash damage. However, these Stalkers have been surrounded. We'll see if he can actually get a flank out here, but he just decides to throw out the GG and leave the game. So in the end, Tech's army was not able to come out on top, as King has redeemed himself as the champion of these casts with a good victory. And it was quite a long game. It was interesting. There was a lot of back and forth action after the initial macro fest, and I hope you enjoyed. Thanks for watching. Once again, my name is Silver, and you guys go out there and get your